isn't your typical motorsports podcast. You're listening to Crush This, a monster truck podcast presented by High Octane Coffee and J Concepts. A show where we take you inside the minds of your favorite drivers, past and present, of the monster truck industry. And now, your hosts, Brad Shaw and Dan Chichagash. Buckle in. The show starts now.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I got it all figured out. So that's pretty cool stuff. I got it all working out here. But it is Cheech from Crush This. Wow, how's it going? I was actually not even supposed to be here today. I got a side project I was working on. And, some situations have came about. The 6 weeks, Brad has missed another week. So the situation going on, I do not know, but hope he feels better and everything like that. So if you guys want to know about Brad, just go message him, and he'll tell you what's up. But it is what it is. So want to give you guys a heads up. I will be at this weekend. I know I will be back in Tennessee, which was kind of funny. And we cannot hear you. Oh, that's great. Let's see here. Audio. Oh. Hello. Let's go here. All right. Hey. Hello. Can you guys hear me? You guys can barely hear me. Oh, jeez. Hello. Before I continue on, can you hear me? Rate from 1 to 10. I will continue on with the program if I get an 8. So, okay. All right. Thanks, Dad. I can hear you loud and okay. That's what you're saying. You hear me. All right, cool. So sorry about that, folks. Like I said, Brad couldn't make it this time. Something happened. So, if you want to know, just go ahead and message him. I guess he's not feeling very well, and this is about the 4th time out of the 6 shows that it has happened. So, but it is what it is. So hopefully he gets better. Like I said, I am going to look at my schedule and find out. I know where I'm going. I just forget the town. So here we go, appearances and my own situation here. Okay, so me and Curtis and Nathan Smith will be in Crossville, Tennessee. If anyone wants to, we're gonna bring ammunition to the East Tennessee Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealer in Crossville, Tennessee. So if anyone wants to come down and say hello, and I think the Saturday afternoon we'll be doing an exhibition car crush. So, and also the week after that, we'll be in Etna, Oklahoma for a monster truck show for Linda Beckley. We're just going to bring the Raminator instead of ammunition. So, Illinois is going to have I just muted myself. I don't know how I did that. Let's see here. They will be in Maryland, Illinois for a display. So here's a funny story I'm going to talk about before we get Joe on. This happened 2 years in a row, including this year. So 2 years. We did a display in Kingsport, Tennessee. The first year we went, we were followed by a white rig, probably about a few feet longer than ours, and we found out later that it was let's see here. Found out later it was Jamie Gardner's 2, Terminal Velocity and Wildside, and they had a show at Gray, Tennessee, at the Appalachian County Fairgrounds. Fast forward to last week, we had a display, and we had a monster truck show 15 minutes away from where we're at. It's just funny how it happens to be like that. And we didn't do the show, but it was an all-star promotion show, which was, I mean, those guys are awesome. Brian Wagner and his crew. It's just, it was just funny because it happened back to back. So I didn't know if maybe the dealerships and stuff like that talk to each other and stuff like that, but I didn't know. But it was just funny that it happens a lot, quite frankly. The last 2 years, pretty much 2019 and 20, we would normally have a monster truck show the same weekend as the dealership. I don't know if the dealership people like to book the same weekend or not knowing there's a monster truck show, or they just do it just because there's a monster truck show there. I don't know, but it has happened multiple times where people have a monster truck show and we're there just, for the dealership. It's just crazy. It's just interesting. But outside of that, want to thank Joe Sylvester and High Octane Coffee. We are going to be at one of his events at Canfield, Ohio, July 3rd. So that's going to be pretty cool. His monster truck drags, outlaw drags are going on and stuff like that. J Concepts. I just released a photo of the Big Boss, which is the part of the J Concepts regulator. Runs an 89 J Concepts Ford F-250 body. Also has the back steering servo that has on it. It runs the 2 T27 motors that J Concepts have. It also runs the Tribute rims and tires, good Goodyear tires. So it's all set from J Concepts, which is be pretty cool to have. So take a look at all their products. They just debuted the Bigfoot 2020 Raptor body, and then also with the decals, take a look at JB Scale Graphics. They just released they're officially licensed by Bigfoot, Obsession, Obsessed, Bad Habit, Overkill Evolution, and others. They just debuted the Ripper. We had that guest on about 3 weeks ago. So that's pretty cool to have. There's some upcoming stuff coming on too. I'm going to try to get a Crush This body made. And that's coming out straight from Brad to JB Scale to put on. So don't forget, JB Scale Graphics also does flags for you guys. So go ahead and take a look at that stuff too. So want to give you a heads up with JB Scale. If you want anything done by them, you got to ask permission by the personnel that owns the names and rights to those trucks. So just you want to go with that. Back Channel Productions. They run all sorts of video campaigns. Like Nick Davis on chat says, he will be, I think you're going to be at Canfield, Nick. You're going to do that Outlaw Thunder Drags. I think you're also doing the Renegade Tour too, I believe. So that'd be pretty cool too. You just released, I think, the Lincoln Speedway one. And that'd be pretty cool to watch. So go check out Back Channel Productions on YouTube. Also, I want to give a shout out to Josh Rhodes and the Retro Monster Truck Review. Go check him out on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. He travels. It's basically a Back to the Future DeLorean back in time monster truck type deal. So, and he will be in Gilbert, which is the week of the first week of the Renegades tour. But go check out Josh Rhodes Retro Monster Truck Review. I did an episode with him maybe a few months ago at Hampton, Virginia in 1988. He has done phenomenal, all sorts of different shows, all the way from the first ever monster truck televised show to right now the most recent to up-to-date year is World Finals 9. So go ahead and take a look at his stuff. He's just going to release information tomorrow with a allmonster.com interview that he did with the legendary Dennis Anderson. If you don't know the guy, hopefully you do. He owned at once a black and green wrecking machine, put that together in a chicken coop. So check him out and listen to that interview. So like Nick Davis says on the chat, if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and ask. I'll give that to Joe. But it is going to be the starting weekend for the Renegade Monster Truck Tour that Zane 2 puts together with all the help from everyone that's going on here. But the cool thing is that's this weekend at Gilbert. And we're going to interview one of the guys that are going to be starring into this program, driving one of Zane 2's monster trucks and representing the classic name Barely Tame with the teammate of Master Disaster is Mr. Joe Lockhart. Hopefully, yep, there we go.
There you go. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. I listen to a lot of these podcasts on the long drives to the tracks, your guys's and Scott Douglas's and a couple other ones, and just cool to be on because there's so many people in the monster truck industry, whether it's truck owners or drivers or crew members. So I appreciate you guys taking the time with me this time.
Oh, no problem, especially since the ball, the train, or the roller coaster of the monster truck world is going to start rolling with you guys. You guys did do, just not to get everyone confused, this ain't your first weekend. You have done a few shows prior to the Renegade portion of it. But this is going to be the start of your Renegade festivities, I guess, until October. So with that going on, the first thing I wanted to know is, how is it now running for different promoters instead of like last year? You ran with Zane to get your feet wet, but now you did a bunch of all-star events too. So how was that experience for you?
That's a pretty good question, actually. All the series we've been in and run have been very welcoming and understanding and helpful. Brian and the all-star guys, they welcomed me in, and we had a lot of fun with them this whole first quarter, basically. Joe and Stacy and Brian and all them guys, they do an amazing job. I think what was different about that series for me, opposed to the Renegade, I didn't have Logan with me running the mini trucks, and of course Zane and Lindsay weren't nearly as busy running the series stuff and kind of overseeing a lot of that stuff. They had a lot more hands-on and focus with the trucks, which really allowed me to dig deep into understanding things I didn't know. I kind of had Zane's undivided attention on working on trucks and helping me through a lot of things that I was kind of green and didn't know. Because he's just so busy with his series, to corner him for, and pick his brain for 15 minutes is usually pretty tough, just because he's got a full plate with everything. So to have his attention in Florida and do, to really learn a lot of things was very beneficial going into the Renegade series. I'd like to say that Florida swing went good, but it went far from anything that we anticipated as the Ratu team. Zane went over a bunch of times in his new truck. I had my first rollover in a truck, and it was actually the slowest, most boring crash you'd have probably ever seen in your life. So pretty disappointed in myself for that. Some of that's just being so green and not understanding, sometimes slow is not your friend in a monster truck, which you would have known. The slower you hit something, the more you'd be upside down. But it was great, but running with the all-stars, those guys took us, went out to dinner with them guys quite a bit. Some of the other drivers, John Zimmer Jr. and Zach Garner, on non-monster truck nights, we went to some sprint car races, kind of got their feet wet over there. And then they must have liked it because they ended up going to some ones handy when I wasn't there. So, but running with different promoters never hurts. They all seem to be same passion and want to be, doing what they're doing and doing a good job. So it was good.
So we're going to talk about a little bit about how you got started and the elephant that is in your room right now, right behind you, number 58. So how did you get into racing, and let's talk about how you got into the world of sprint cars too. So let's go first how you got into racing, and then how did you get into sprint cars?
Yeah, I started when I was relatively young. I struggled most of my life racing only because my family didn't come from racing. My dad wasn't into racing. Um, so I started mowing grass and I bought my first go-kart. My dad took me to the track, didn't really want a lot to do with it, but because I liked it, he ended up throwing it in the back of his truck and taking me. I started in go-karts, did some motocross, dirt bikes, bounced back to some go-karts, found a home in ATV racing for quite a while. Traveled with Hetrick Racing and SRE Industries and stuff, and they kind of took me all over the country with that. I found a love for stock car racing, more of a stock class at our local speedway. Believe it or not, my mom, out of everybody, was the most into racing as far as just going and watching. So she took us on Sunday nights to like our local Tri-City Speedway. I just fell in love with circle track racing, something to do. I bought my first stock car when I was 16. Was nothing great. Didn't have the money to do it. But we got a car together and kind of did that for 5 or 6 years. I did take a break from racing for probably 3 or 4 years in general through my 20s. Just to focus on business. My whole life was getting eaten up with racing. I was spending every dime I had to go racing. So I told myself I wanted to build a business to where if I could come back to racing, I could race at the level I wanted to race at. And if I couldn't get to that, then I didn't want to race, because I'd raced long enough at that point that it wasn't fun to run 5th through 10th. I really wanted to win some races, and I knew my caliber of equipment and my knowledge, to be honest with you, just wasn't there. So I needed to regroup, and I came back to racing as a car owner, mostly because of my son had just been born, and the dangers affiliated with it. And it's weird, as you get older, you start thinking about that stuff. I didn't want him to grow up without a dad if something, God forbid, happened to me. So I ventured into sprint car racing of initially hiring drivers or having drivers drive for us. Quickly built into a pretty good operation, because I really loved the business side of the racing and working with the sponsors and promoters and that sort of stuff. And we were very fortunate with funding and stuff, hitting the streets advertising and stuff, and allowed us to do a lot of traveling and win some championships and stuff. When things went, wouldn't say south with the driver, but when we parted ways for him to do some of his own stuff, I climbed back in the seat and raced for a while. I enjoyed it. I still enjoy racing sprint cars or whatever. But the ball quickly turned again because my son was old enough to race. So my last year of racing sprint cars, my son raced his first full year of go-karts, and we were on the road over 90 nights that year. And I knew at that point, like, something had to break. It was either going to be him racing and dedicating all my time and energy into that, or I was going to race. And you know what? He was 5 years old and was diehard to go racing. And I found comfort in watching him race and be successful. So we kind of did that, which led us to where we are now with the monster trucks and Zane and Lindsay. Because it's a funny story, but I always joke like I'm riding the coattails of him now, because he more or less got me into the monster truck stuff.
So before we get to the monster truck stuff, I wanted a few questions about the sprint cars and stuff like that, like we talked about beforehand. And the level that you're racing in was in the 410 category. And maybe if someone doesn't know the ins and outs of a sprint car, just explain about one of those cars.
Well, they're a 12 to 1,300 pound car with a wing on it. The wing means a lot in sprint car racing. The downforce and the wind, they call what they call kind of like dirty air. So when you're not in the lead, the wind's coming at different variables and stuff, and setting the car different. But the biggest thing about a sprint car is it is direct drive. I mean, you're in gear, you're out of gear, and that's something, when you first sit in a sprint car and get going, they push you off because there's no transmission. So you're in gear, you're out of gear. You can step on the brakes and slow down a little bit, but there's no stopping the car, pushing the clutch in, or doing anything like that. The cars average, anywhere between 90 and 140 miles an hour average speed at different tracks, and they're open wheels, so you're not wanting to touch each other or bump into any guardrails or doing anything like that. In a typical race car, any race car, but specifically a sprint car, I mean, the drive shaft's running between your legs. Your power steering's right in front of you. The engine's literally inches in front of your feet. The hot fuel lines are coming in. They're returning on the left side. All of your brake stuff. I mean, absolutely every possible thing that could go wrong in a race car is seriously surrounded you in a sprint car. But it's an amazing thing to drive. I mean, I always kid that it's like getting to drive a rocket shot out of a plane, that you can kind of steer and sometimes you kind of can't, depending on how it's set up. But there's not many feelings in the world like piloting one of those things.
So when you're racing one of those cars, I mean, your mind has to be calculating everything that's going on. Like I asked when we talked about previously, I mean, before we went on air, about finding the line on a sprint car. When do you know when you're going to lose traction, or when is it time to go find another line to get that speed? Because, I mean, even though you're not like racing a NASCAR Cup car where you're having 200 laps, you're racing maybe maximum of between 25 to 50 laps at whatever racetrack you're at as a main. So you have to be calculating so much during a race. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it?
It can be, for sure, and that's some of the reason why Logan was so successful. Is any kid has a jump start in life because if their parents have raced, because they've lived that and they can explain that down to them. But closing speed is something I always worked really hard with Logan, and going into what you're asking, you catch the back of a field, you're doing 120 miles an hour, you're going to catch the slower cars very fast, and you got to pay attention to how fast you're catching them, where they're running, and sometimes it's a split second decision on whether you're going to end up on your roof or you're going to pass the person. But as far as the lines go, the dirt changes very fast. It changes. You have to pay attention all throughout the night, and then specifically as the race is going on. Like you said, most of these races are 25 to 40 laps. So if you're starting in the back, you better pass a car every lap to get to the front. But as far as track lines and things, sprint cars are different than most of the other types of cars that are heavier. Sprint cars so light opposed to like a late model or modified. So in a late model, you don't want your wheels spinning a lot because it's slowing you down. But in a sprint car, they call that wheel speed because when you find that little bit of grip on the track, it'll actually catapult you forward very quickly. But generally on a dirt track, you're more or less looking for a berm to either get your right rear up on and go around. The lighter colored or darker colored dirt, which would mean it has some moisture in it, or if a track could rubber up very fast and you want to run right through the rubber. Sometimes you have to watch the track throughout the night before the race starts and kind of set your car up to think what it might do and where you want to commit to. A lot of times you don't get a balance in a race car to where you could run the top or the bottom or the middle. Like you got to gear it and set it up to know like there's a cushion up there and I'm going to commit to banging off of it for those 30 laps. Or, maybe there's nothing up there and you want to gear it and set it up to run off the bottom where there's some moisture or get some rubber on your right rear tire. So it's a crapshoot, man. That's why there's not a lot of the same winners every night, depending on the track, because it comes down to setup and how well you can read the track and how well you can move around on the track. You're going so fast and, you're glancing at gauges to watch the track change and the people in front of you. I mean, there's a lot going on, but it's still nothing like a monster truck. I mean, there is so much more going on in a monster truck in the cockpit than a race car ever has been. So it's a huge transition for me.
Well, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Let people a little bit. I got maybe two more questions about the sprint car side of it, everything. Also, people may not know that if they don't follow the sport, that every corner of that car has a different size tire.
Yes,
I mean, and that's crazy to know about that.
Yeah, the sprint car and even dirt track cars, I mean, most of the tires are a different size. And what that allows it to do is more or less gives you a stagger to where the car will help the car rotate or turn left. Sprint car tires are probably run the most stagger. They do run the most stagger than any other forms of dirt track. When you let off the throttle in a 410 sprint car, it will immediately turn left because the right rear tire is so much bigger than the left rear. But stagger plays a huge factor in depending on the banking of the track and stuff. So you wanna pick that wisely too. A lot of times there can be anywhere between 8 and 15 inches of difference in the right rear tire or the rear tires of the cars.
Now we have to go. Now I'm going with two more. My dad, Frank Agosh, was asking, does the wing move on a sprint car?
Yes, at the 410 level, there's a slider in the car, so you can adjust the wing forward and backwards. It cannot. You have to pick the tilt of the wing prior to the race, but it will slide forward and backward during the race. Typically, if you're starting to get really loose and the car is sliding around on you, you can bring that wing back, and that'll generally tighten the car up enough to help you throughout the rest of the race. And that's the crapshoot too, because if you adjust it early in the race, you're doomed the rest of the race. So if you have a bad car right off the get-go, it's only going to get worse. But you can usually make up a little bit of setup on the sliding the wing back. Hopefully you have it dialed into where it's right at the end of the race, and it really propels you those last few laps.
Now, my last question is that logo, I think on the back of the wing, the World of Outlaws Sprint Car Series. Now, this is actually, I think, 2-in-1, but if from obviously people think that if you're in PA, you're part of the PA Posse, the famous outlaw group that the Sprint Car Series goes, and they take on the All Stars, the World of Outlaws, and stuff like that. And if you're a part of that, and if not, if so, I mean, did you do a full season with the World of Outlaws?
I didn't. For us, basically, understanding racing as a business, we ran where it made sense. And sometimes it just made sense to go run with the World of Outlaws, and sometimes it made sense to run with the All Stars, or it made more sense to stay home. We spent a good bit of time running kind of all over the place. The World of Outlaws obviously pay the most. Last place in a World of Outlaw race is $800, which is pretty good in a sprint car. So for me, I kind of pick and choose where I went. If there was a local race that was only paying $150 for last, I would go run with the World of Outlaws 4, 5, 6, 8 hours away, knowing that last place was 800. We weren't successful in winning a ton of 410 sprint car races. We won a pile of 305 sprint car races as I developed the team. But in my opinion, like, we weren't really searching for that win money. We were searching for what 5th through 10th paid, and made a business decision on where to go from there. But the All Stars and the Outlaws paid the most. So if you're just traveling to have fun and make money, you needed to travel a little bit with them instead of staying at home.
Right. And so now let's go to the transition. You had the sprint cars. You have your son. How in the heck did you get yourself inside of a monster truck?
Yeah, well, that's actually a pretty involved story. Kind of funny to some extent. I ended up, with racing sprint cars, I come to know Joey Sylvester, and he called me out of the blue one day. Logan, I'd actually taken some time to focus on Logan, so I wasn't currently driving a race car. I was traveling with Logan 3 nights a week, running junior sprints and go-karts. Joey called me and told me about the Outlaw Monster Truck Drags and what they were doing. And Zane and Lindsay were bringing an extra mini truck. Logan was pretty respectful on equipment. Been kind of distilled in his head not to bang and beat things up. So they had extended the offer for Logan to come over and film, that pay-per-view event with the Outlaw Monster Truck Drags. We showed up over there and been around racing for a long time, but we showed up over there and I think they drastically underestimated how small Logan was, even for his age. Of course, Zane and Lindsay were coming off of COVID, so that was, I think, that was their first show back since they had stopped running anywhere. Basically, Zane, in the first 5 minutes, he's like, "Hey, there's the toolbox. Here's the trailer. If you can make it work, we'd love to have them drive, but they're busy doing their own stuff. They didn't bring any mechanics or anything, so they were thrashing on their own stuff to get it done. And CJ's Mini was there, and they were doing that. But in the first 15 minutes I was there, I had the whole inside of his mini truck tore apart, the seat completely out of it. I was cutting brackets, and I can only imagine what they were thinking. He told me to go ahead. I felt a little bit awkward about doing that. So we got him fit in the truck. He went down and practiced for a few minutes. He didn't get a lot of time. The minis didn't get a lot of time at that pay-per-view event. And they were actually scheduled to run a show in Erie that following weekend. So they invited him up to run the truck a little bit longer up in Erie. And it worked out really well because CJ ran in Erie, and then Logan and Garrett were about the same size. Garrett's their other son, and so they kind of shared the barely tame truck and both got some seat time. And we had a really good time. I'm not one of those that can, sit around and, one of them that sit around. So I helped out with whatever I could with, Zane's truck and Stinger and them, and just kind of enjoyed the weekend. Left there with, an awesome experience. And it was really weird that Zane had reached out to me the following week, and he had talked about bringing Logan down and maybe driving some more in the mini truck at their test track. Oddly, at the very end of that conversation, he kind of mentioned, bring your helmet and your gear, and maybe we could get you in a truck or whatnot. And to me, that was really cool for him to say, but in my mind, I was going down there to focus on Logan. That's what I've been doing the last year, is really putting my time and energy into him. So I didn't think much about driving one. We got down there that weekend that they wanted him to come, and spent a good part of the day maintenance in some trucks and finishing up Garrett's truck, actually, so all the kids could practice and do that. And it gets pretty funny from here, and I still tell this story, but the kids practiced, and it was almost dark, I think, that Saturday night. And Zane kind of come to me in a panic. He's like, "We really need to get you out in the arena and get some practice in." And I'm like, "Don't worry about it, man. I'm having a great time working on the minis and doing whatever." Wasn't heart set on doing it. I appreciate the opportunity, but no, he's like, "We really need you to get you out there." And like I said, it's about dark. I got in the truck. Embarrassingly enough, I couldn't even get the truck from the shop to the arena. Like, I didn't understand how the rear steer worked. His switches were a little bit different than what I thought how they worked. I was more or less embarrassed. I'm like, I can't even get this truck into the arena, which, I didn't really know where things were going anyway. I just thought he was extending an offer to, just kind of cool thing to drive one. Once I got that figured out, I did make a couple figure eights inside the arena, and it got pretty dark. So I brought the truck back to the shop, and I was excited, man. I'm like, man, that's probably something I'll never get to do again. That's an awesome opportunity. We went to dinner that night. Didn't really talk about much to do with monster trucks, just general life and whatnot. Got out in the shop early Sunday, did some more work on some trucks. Kids practiced a little more, and again, he come to me and he's like, "We really need you to make a race pass and like do all this stuff." And anybody that doesn't know Zane sometimes makes a decision and like he's a million miles ahead of you. So in his mind, I didn't even know about a Renegade series or any of this sort of stuff. I was just kind of doing whatever they needed with Logan. So I went out and I made a couple race passes and a couple jumps on the freestyle track and pulled back in. And, they started shutting the truck and stuff down and getting it cooled down. And he mentioned over to me, he's like, well, you'll be good for the first race. And I'm like, what do you mean the first race? And he's like, well, we're doing, the Renegade Tour is going to be based on like teams. So we have matching minis to the big trucks. We want you and Logan to drive Barely Tamed, and I'm going to drive Stinger with CJ, and Lindsay's going to drive with Garrett, and that's how it's going to go. And I'm like, oh, well, that's really cool, And I was like, well, when's that? And he's like, well, next weekend, Westmoreland, we're going to start. So kind of funny how it all came together. And I always laugh because I always say, like, riding the coattails of my son, because he got me there. I didn't. I wouldn't have done it without him. So.
Let's go to that first show at Westmoreland. Was there any talk beforehand on what they wanted you to do? Basically, I mean, just the feel, the show in general, not drive over your head or anything like that. What was your game plan coming into Westmoreland?
It's something I probably haven't really thought about till you asked. There wasn't a lot of talk about it. And I don't know if that stemmed from him just relying that I was common sense smart in the fact of like racing stuff before, or if a lot of me wants to say that they were so busy with their first event that season, setting everything up and making sure things were good, making sure trucks were correct, that they weren't overly concerned about me, which I had not a clue what I was doing. Like, and this went on for weeks. Like, I didn't know. Funny story. Like, the first time I went to the finals with Corey at Toxic, like they shut us off, and I think there's something wrong with my truck because I've been to a lot of monster truck shows with my son, but I didn't pay attention a lot of how things worked. And of course, they were trying to talk up the big event, the finals, and then I understood why they killed us, and because they were talking about us. But no real game plan going into Westmoreland, and I think there was just so much going on. And for me, I didn't have a lot of time to process because we were focusing on the kids and what they needed to do as part of the show, or the event. There wasn't, I guess in the sense, take it easy till you get the feel for it and stuff. But there wasn't a lot of talk about performance or what was expected. I understood that, and I understand to this day because I've done racing and own my own stuff. Like, we don't want to be tearing up a lot of stuff. So I think just going into it was, make common sense decisions and let's not end up on our lid. And I kind of stuck to that mentality most of the year, I think, with it.
So then you go to your, you have Westmoreland. Then I think you go to a few of these racetracks. Now, Westmoreland, compared to some of these racetracks, has a lot more room compared to these places. Watching the video from Back Channel Productions, you learn very fast that the wall gets really, really close to you when you're about to try to swing into a donut, or when you're racing someone in the finals or racing in general. So like you said before, inside a monster truck is a lot more going on compared to a sprint car. Let's talk about the monster truck compared to the sprint car here. Even though I think the only similarity between the two is they both run the same type of M1 alcohol racing fuel. Because when you close your eyes, if you don't hear them the first smell that you hit at a sprint car race is that alcohol fumes that coming out of those cars going around the track.
Right.
But outside of that, they're two completely different vehicles. We already heard about your side on the sprint cars. Now let's go to the monster trucks. So how is it compared to a sprint car?
Yeah, they're totally different animals. Back to the track surfaces or facilities, Westmoreland spoiled me right off the get-go. I mean, that was so big and wide and had lots of room to turn. And then I think our next 3 or 4 shows were all speedway shows that were walls and tight turns and all that. And not to venture off into something else, but if you're not familiar with monster trucks, and I question now how many fans actually know some of this stuff, but crush cars crush different in different parts of the country. A car down south won't crush nearly as hard as a car, say in North Dakota or something, or Pennsylvania. I knew different types of dirt meant different things with racing across the country, but dirt breaks down different on ramps and that. So there's a lot of things happening at the venues that I'm not sure a lot of people know until you actually have to get out there and perform. But as far as the caliper of or differences of stuff, I mean, I don't even know that you could compare it. There's so much going on in a monster truck. In a sprint car, you're glancing at gauges, you're watching your line, you're watching other cars on the track, and then you're more or less get used to that speed. So that seems pretty normal. Monster trucks now, with the rear steer, so you're basically turning the rear of the truck with your right hand and the front of the truck with your left hand. You're using a lot of foot controls with the gas and the brake, and the gauges in the truck. To watch the gauges in a truck is very much more important than not more important, but you need to watch them a little closer. Things get hotter faster in a monster truck. The oil accumulator. There's so much more things that you need to remember to do in a truck than you ever do in a race car. We don't have radio communication and circle track racing, so that was a little bit different for me, trying to give feedback of what was going on and just getting in there quickly and getting your helmet and stuff on with your radio, getting that hooked up to everything. And but yeah, just turning wise. And then, so you're in the truck and you have all this going on, then you actually need to perform and do well, which is, the truck is so much wider. You don't know, until you're in one for a while, actually how wide a truck is. And when you accelerate, the front end comes up and you lose vision of the ramps. You lose vision of the cars. Sometimes you need to look down through the floorboards just to make sure you're square. But by that time, sometimes it's even too late. So just, I don't know that you could even compare the two, honestly. They're completely different beasts.
So how about the first time you hit a set of cars and you hit a ramp? Did they ever tell you, like, I always hear, like, through when we went to when I worked for let's say Monster Jam University, I always say, if you think you're going fast, go faster. The time Brad always asks, when you first hit a set of cars, you thought you're like 10 feet up in the air, but they said you're only like 2 feet.
Right.
What for how quickly you have to learn about these things? Was that a trait that you had to learn about, that you thought you're going faster, but you need to go faster than that to get the performance that you need for the crowd?
Yeah, you're probably pretty spot on with that. I learned very fast, and especially after Florida swing, speed is definitely your friend in a monster truck. The slower you hit things, the worse they can kind of be without having that momentum. I didn't know a thing about it, man. Honestly, our first show, like I said, Zane and Lindsay were so busy. I really relied on a lot of this time with the Renegade Tour. I picked Corey Snyder and Jay Snyder from Toxic's brain a lot. Anytime they went out and looked at the track, I'd go out and ask too many questions. Sometimes I thought, maybe I was being annoying to them. But yeah, there's so many different obstacles in a monster truck, and the height of things, opposed to if there's a little bit of dirt in front of it. An elevated car stack will hit different than a traditional car. But for my first, the Westmoreland, there wasn't a lot of big jumps. There were race lanes, and we had big loader tires. So we got some. I think I did a lot of sky wheelies that night. I think I got pretty vertical in my last one that I did. And a donut. But yeah, like you say, I think you think you're a lot higher than you really are. Now my second run at Sealands Grove was catastrophically different. they had a van stack, was the very first hit of freestyle for me. I knew I was higher than I'd ever been in that. And that only lasted about 30 seconds because what I didn't understand at that point in time, even with the motocross background, was a 3-foot pile of packed in dirt will not give, and it'll throw you way higher than a car or anything else. So I backsided the stoppy ramp of Zane's, and I'm certain that this isn't right, but I felt like I was as high as the light poles at the speedway. So just learning those different things, different ramp angle. Like I knew ramp angles from motocross, but what it did to a truck was a lot different. But yeah, I mean, seriously, just learned on the fly. Zane, if you can corner him and make him think about how he's driving a truck and corner him into a corner for 15 minutes, an amazing teacher. I've got to test at his place a very little bit to emphasize how well he can teach. I think my third attempt at a stoppie, I was vertical in a stand-up. But I had his undivided attention, and that's very tough to get. Like I said, he's got a full plate with running the series and driving a truck and overseeing some mechanics and all that stuff. He has really great people in good spots going into this season. I hope he's a little bit free to enjoy some of what he's worked for. But I really, like I said, learned, picked a lot of other drivers' brains just because I wanted to be better and I wanted to perform, Zane's trucks to perform well. This Florida swing, I got to know John Zimmer Jr. and Zach Garner. Zach, they're both very talented drivers for their age. You can pick up a lot just by listening to people talk, even not asking them. They'll, just their stories and their stuff, or even just watching them run, you kind of learn a lot. But basically had to learn quite a bit on the fly this year. But I don't know that I had that time to be nervous because, like I said, we had so much going on with our kids and making sure they were okay and making sure they understood, a good run to have a good performance. It was just climb in a truck and do what you can do. So pretty different and interesting, actually.
Actually, Nick Davis asked the question here, and you want to talk to you about getting used to body roll.
If I know what he's meaning exactly, which I got to give the guy a shout out, man. Like I got to know him so well. Nick, he did a lot of production stuff for us last year with doing the Renegade tour, and his videos and stuff are cool. So Back Channel Productions, it was just really cool to get to know him and see his work. But body roll, it can kind of throw you different directions, or doing whatever. I'll never forget. I mean, even to this day, like you have an idea or a game plan, maybe going out for freestyle that you want to hit. At least starting freestyle, like hit this jump, hit this jump, hit this jump. Well, if I understand what he's asking me, like I hit the first one and that body will roll to one side and kind of point the truck in a different direction, and you better be able to regroup and continue on and run solid because it can throw you in a different direction and throw off your idea of what you want to do and very quickly.
Are you starting to learn about what can break in a monster truck, like an axle breaking or losing a third member or tweaking a sway bar? Are you starting to learn about what signs so you can go back to the pits and be like, hey, I got something messed up?
In fairness, I would like to say I am. Knock on wood, I've been very fortunate that I haven't broke a lot of stuff. We did break a knuckle in van work last year, and that was a vertical jump off of a car that kind of came down on the back and kind of pogoed. Again, first time I hit an elevated car stack, I should not have preloaded the front of the truck. I didn't know it would throw me straight up and down like that. 90% of the time, a truck would probably absorb that, but in this case, it did break it. And then thankfully, again, I'm knocking on wood the whole time I'm saying this, but I rolled the truck over in Florida. I know Zane keeps pretty good trucks together. They maintenance them pretty well. I have never experienced a broken spindle or an axle stripping or anything. I've seen him do it in racing. I understand how it all works in that, but like I said, thankfully, I can tell you when I come in if my sway bars need adjusted. I'm probably better at reading engine noises or watching gauges and understanding if oil pressure and whether my tranny is getting hot or radiator's hot. So I can radio a lot of that sort of stuff. And it's funny that you say that because go back through and watch any of the videos that I see, and the mistakes that I make in freestyle, I can tell you exactly, like I didn't turn correctly because I was radioing, somebody on the crew about something. So it's funny to go back and watch some of those, but very little, which is probably a good problem. I haven't had to radio them with maybe something. I had some rear steer problems a lot last year. And I don't know why, but rear steer is such a simple it's such a simple setup, but it took me until Florida to really understand, I guess, how that really works with electronics and hydraulics and stuff, even after all the problems I had with it last year. But I quickly understood in the monster truck industry that sometimes you just got to go out there and make good decisions and run as hard as you can with when things aren't perfect all the time. If your rear steer is broke, like do the best you can with it, and do it, put on some type of show for the fans.
Now, another quick transition that you had this year was going from a Patrick to a Cohen. Zane put you in the truck that he ran most of last year's Renegade Tour. Now he's running a metal shop chassis that Ryan and Rick Disharoon had put together. So how is that transition to having drive two different chassis? Because I strongly believe in the monster truck world, every truck's different. Doesn't matter. You can have three metal shops. You got Toxic, Sting, and the new King Sling. All three of them are going to be a different running truck on how they are. So now you're used to running the Patrick style chassis. Now he throws you into a different maker chassis type deal. So now, how's that going for you?
Well, again, that's a lengthy story. And I pick on Zane for this. I fell in love with the Patrick truck only because, in fairness, that's the only one I drove. But I really started becoming comfortable in that truck at the end of the Renegade Tour. There was some uncertainty going into the fall here, who was going to be in what trucks. They decided to redo the truck that I was in from the bare frame. They had the frame updated a little bit from the metal shop, and then they did an amazing job refurbing that truck. It was black and red. It was master disaster. Like Zane would tell you, like I still pick on him. I begged to be in that truck, not only because it felt comfortable, it looked cool. It was my colors from Sprint Car Race, and it was. But he really wanted me in that new truck, and I was game for doing it. I got to test it in a little bit, turned it down there. We went to Florida with very, very high hopes. At least I had very high hopes going to Florida because I'd had 20 some shows in, or 16, 18 shows in at that point. Kind of understood trucks, and I knew that we didn't have the series commitment, and we didn't have the minis with us. So really was focused on Florida. It went not well at all for me. Everything that could probably go wrong went wrong in Florida. To be fair with how it all came about, after our Florida swing, I called Zane on the way home, and I can say this story because I've been in Zane's shoes. When you provide somebody best of the best equipment, and they're not comfortable, or I wouldn't say unhappy, but not comfortable with it. For me to want changes done to it is so selfish. And like, if somebody that I gave a sprint car operation to came to me and said, I want this, this, and this changed, I would say, go drive for somebody else. Like, you have the best of the best, either drive it or don't drive it. Zane was far different from that. I kind of just told him I wasn't comfortable in it. It landed hard. My seat wasn't right. I couldn't really reach the pedals. All things that I thought I had figured out at the shop prior to going to Florida just wasn't right for me. And of course, the experience of things breaking and we just had a rough Florida swing. I kind of told Zane, like, I'd feel better if you just put someone else in the truck and we'll just do the stuff with Logan and the mini stuff. To my surprise, which he's a better person than me in this aspect, they sent that truck back to the metal shop, cut it all apart, redid all the shock mounts. We redid my seat, got a foot riser for me. They spent new wheels and tires. I mean, they spent in the essence of easy $10,000 to $12,000 to satisfy me in a sense, to keep driving. And that says a lot about somebody, especially the Ratu family, to ante up and put that kind of money into a truck that's, less than a year old, that obviously he performed very well in. Yeah, I don't know, that the Florida deal was bad. The transition was bad for me. I'm forever thankful that they sent that back. I told him after we went to Georgia after that, and I actually won the racing event down there. That was the first time I got out of any truck, even the Patrick truck last year, and didn't feel, a little bit of bumps and bruises and maybe my neck strained a little bit or whatnot. I could tell you right now that I feel probably the most comfortable in a truck, in that Cohen truck right now. Just my feet are in the right spot. My Hans is working right, or my neck restraint. My head's tight. The seat's perfect. The engine's running great. The shocks that the metal shop did, they did an amazing job with the geometry and changing things on that. Zane and I worked on the setting the shocks and the pressure, and I think we're very, very close on that. I haven't hit a bus stack with it or anything yet, but it's pretty spot on. I think I'm the most comfortable in it right now.
So we're coming up to the Renegade season, and you're gonna be facing some new faces like Saigon Shaker and a couple others, but you'll face some of the same group of people outside of your team, like the Virginia Giant and Toxic. What are you looking forward to in this coming season? Are you gonna try to rattle some people cages? Are you going to try to be Mr. Consistency, or what is your type of game plan coming into this year's season?
That's probably a pretty good question. I really haven't thought too much about that. I do know there's some new faces coming on. I'm more excited just to meet them because I haven't actually got to meet a lot of the top guys in the industry. Ryan's worked on our trucks. They're building us new mini trucks. The metal shop, haven't really got to be around those guys a whole lot. If any of these teams are like Snyder's and Toxic, I mean, it'll just be in a blast season because, they're very welcoming and helpful. As far as my game plan is pretty much just consistent runs and not tear up a bunch of stuff. I don't want to be stuck working on a truck till 2-3 in the morning, just as much as I don't want the crew guys to be stuck doing it. And thirdly, I don't want to cost anybody a bunch of money. The reason that people get the opportunities to drive in any form of motorsports is, they're not breaking a lot of stuff, and they're willing to help fix it and stuff, and kind of do whatever it's taken. We tested some new tricks at Zane's place. I have a handful of new things that I'm able to do that I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable in doing. was pretty limited last year, and that wasn't solely Zane putting the clamp on letting me do anything. I restricted myself some. I didn't hit every obstacle last year only because I didn't know what it was going to do all the time, and I made a better choice as to turn away from it, hit the things I was familiar with, and kind of be consistent. But doing some stoppies now, I'm really excited about those. I really enjoy doing those. The kind of got donuts down to where they're a little tighter for straightaways at like Sealands Grove and different things that I think we could do a little better. Sky wheelies are a little better. Seems to be with going this year. Just excited to have some different comfortable tricks to be able to do. I'm obviously competitive at heart. I was able to get a couple wins last year with the Renegade Tour, even being new. Beat Corey, which is pretty significant. He's an aggressive driver. He went undefeated for the first part of the season with the Renegades. Zane, all them guys there. I think the misconception in any of the monster truck world is, that it's rigged to some extent, but I can assure you to anybody that's listening, like, it's for bragging rights. Absolutely. Like, we pick on each other all the time if one of us doesn't get a win that, could have or should have. So I think just consistent, not break a bunch of stuff, and, be there at the end of the season. It's a long season. We're pretty well booked through Halloween, and I would love to say at the end of this year that I was very minimal on breaking stuff, but kind of ran hard and had a good season. So that's my game plan anyway.
Dustin Spellone from Florida said, watching you all Florida tour, then seeing footage from after the Florida swing on the revamp, it looks like a whole fresh level of confidence was gained, and it was noticeable.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Dustin, and that's pretty well spot on. I mean, Florida, like I said, did not go well for us at all. A lot of things happened after Florida. Obviously the truck got reworked. Zane didn't drive those last handful of shows through South Carolina. They got Leon Hofstetter there, some seat time in the Master of Disaster. And again, like I'd said before, and I mentioned, when you can corner Zane and get his undivided attention, things are catastrophically different. Like, some of those shows, he'd come over the radio, like, keep your momentum up, or, you could hit that one a little faster next time, or do whatever. Wouldn't say he guided us through them by any means, but that reassurance of him on the radio, or telling you to some of the things you did good and some of the things we could work on, definitely propelled all of us. I mean, Lindsay enjoyed that. Leon surely benefited from it. I definitely benefited from it. So there was a lot of things happening. I mean, after the truck revamp at the metal shop, and Zane being able to focus on his team and his trucks, I mean, things went really well those last several shows. So he's pretty spot on, but I do appreciate that, because I felt it every bit of what you saw. So it's good to see other people see it.
So is there any social media that people can check you out on?
I pretty much just have the Facebook. I did recently do a Instagram. Lindsay told me at a show in Georgia, that you should probably have one, because that's what the fans see on the trucks. So I did start one of those. I don't think I have a ton of followers on it yet, but it's Joe_barely tame for that. And I just kind of keep that monster truck related. My Facebook, I kind of post everything that I do with monster trucks, but I also throw in, what Logan and I are doing for fun, and the pranks and different things that we do. But yeah, anybody that wants to jump on there, it's just a traditional motorsports life, I suppose. Always on the road traveling, or doing something crazy with engines and trucks or cars. So it's good.
Awesome, man. Well, can't wait to see how you do this weekend over in Gilbert. and get ready for this awesome Renegade tour. But thank you for coming on. It was actually pretty cool, and have people know about you driving Barely Tamed and a little bit of the history of sprint car racing for you.
Well, I sure appreciate being on here. I know there's a ton of things going on in the industry and a lot of people you can talk to, so I definitely appreciate that. But definitely want to thank Zayd and Lindsay too for the opportunity to drive that truck. There's a lot of people that could and would and want to get in a monster truck. And all the associated sponsors with our team. Rugged Radios came on this year. Schroeder Torsion Bars came on this year. All of our sponsors from last year. Wayton's Towing and Recovery is one of the bigger sponsors for definitely for Barely Tame and keeping that truck out on the road. But PCS powder coating, 717 wraps. I mean, all these associated sponsors are huge in the role of the Rotu Motorsports team with, finances and products and everything else. So without them, I don't know that they'd be able to run a four truck program, or they could, but it sure helps. But yeah, I appreciate everybody's input. I look forward to seeing everybody at the Renegade Tour this weekend. Forrest and Chris and Andy and Dan, all them guys, they're ramped up and ready to go. They've done a lot of training this year for themselves, and I'm excited to see them again. So.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being on. Once again, people, thank you for being on this episode of Crush This. Want to thank everyone from High Octane Coffee, J Concepts, JB Scale Graphics, Back Channel Productions, which will be at the Gilbert Speedway. So show some love for both of them. 6B Apparel. I have a crew shirt on. This is the new wave. We got the old school one too for $100 a pop. I'm sorry, Chris, for not giving you a shout out earlier in the program. My bad on that. JB Scale Graphics. Take a look at the decals and wraps that they do, officially licensed by Bigfoot, Bad Habit, Against the Grain, and many more. So take a look at that. And then next week's guest is going to be Mr. BJ Johnson. He drove Gas Monkey Garage, Mohawk Warrior, Barefoot, the California Kid. He was part of the Monster Truck Mafia back in the day. So take a look at him. We're going to give him a shout out and some love and see what has he been doing since he has left the seat of Monster Trucks. Had himself recently a kid with Miss Lindsay Johnson. If you may not know her, she was the daughter of Rich Hilgendorf. And he was part of Team Scream. Drove the Spike monster truck for them for a while in the 2000s and whatnot. So it's going to be pretty cool to have BJ on. But once again, Joe, thank you for coming on. And thank you, fans, for being here. And this is Crush This, a Monster Truck podcast. Keep the rubber side down and the shiny side up. Peace.
Thanks, guys.